Hi, my name is Ann Werda. I'm the founder of Kids at the Core. I think it's important that we spend some time talking about the goal writing process. This is related to the Student Learning Objective, or SLO, and we're going to talk about it from the perspective of the teacher and some of the things that are important to consider during this process. In the goal writing phase, there's really 5 specific steps that need to be addressed. The first step is what we call collecting baseline data. When we collect baseline data, we're going to look at what students were able to do at the beginning of the instructional interval. This is usually from a pre-test or some sort of a baseline assessment that's going to measure and monitor student ability on the key essential learning skills for that particular class or course. Once those essential learnings have been measured, teachers get a really good idea of where students are starting, so they can take that baseline data and begin to analyze it. In the analysis phase, teachers are going to start to write goals. The district needs to provide a tool for teachers to tabulate their ideas, whether it's a form, something like the one you see here, or perhaps it's an Excel spreadsheet or a database, but in some way teachers are going to be entering those initial baseline scores and then those specific growth targets. When this teacher starts to analyze their data, they're going to begin to determine student needs. It's very clear that from that baseline information, the teacher can start to see student strengths as well as student weaknesses. So this is a really important time for the teacher to start to figure out what those needs might be. In this third step, the teacher is going to write the actual goal. The goal should be a SMART goal. It should be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. It should also be growth-focused, so it should be a goal that's focused on the growth of those students, not necessarily attaining proficiency per se, because some students may be close to proficiency already, and that's not a very rigorous target, and some students may be several grade levels below, and so obtaining grade level proficiency may be unreasonable. Rather, appropriate and realistic goals should be set for each student in their improvement. As the learning process continues, the teacher will collect subsequent data by giving formative assessments, analyzing those formatives, and determining what's working and what's not working. That information is going to help the teacher pivot, change what they plan to do based on the needs of the unique students in their classroom. Certainly that teacher has a toolbox of all sorts of ways to help that student improve, and so as they develop this formative assessment data, they'll be able to say what's working, what's not working, and what other tools they need to pull out of the toolbox. At the end of the SLO process, they're going to communicate their outcomes, and that means the teacher's going to talk about the percentage or number of students that were able to achieve the targets that they have set. So how many students were you successful in getting them to the point at which we predetermined was our goal? Now I'm going to dig into step 2 a little bit, because this is an important piece and it really requires a little bit of thinking. Districts are going to need to help teachers with the data analysis piece. This may be by providing them tools like, for example, online resources, data analysis tools, data warehousing tools, data roll-up and dashboard tools, or simple data protocols. So what's the first thing I should do when I look at my baseline data? What's the second thing I should do? I have a 4-step plan and some stoplight highlight tools that I have on both my website as well as on YouTube in videos. So those might be helpful protocols to start teachers on the process of how do I analyze my data. Within the goal setting piece, I want to dig into that a little deeper. Teachers are supposed to be using, as I said, SMART goals. So what does that mean? How do we set clear growth goals of student growth? One of the things we need to remember is, despite the fact that we may have had experience in writing SMART goals, many goals that we've written in the past are going to be attainment goals. In other words, goals for proficiency. And that's really the era that we were focused on, especially in the NCLB era, where we wanted to see a closing of achievement gaps. We wanted to see a number of students reaching proficiency. The problem that we found over time with these types of goals is we ended up focusing on the kids that were very close, or the bubble kids, and then those students that were already proficient or students far from proficiency, other methods need to be put in place to make sure that those students were receiving appropriate growth. And so with the growth goal, what we're going to do is make sure we're focusing on students throughout the entire spectrum. So when we write a goal, it's going to look something like this. All of my ELA students will improve their score by 20% on the district writing rubric by the end of the second semester. Now, interestingly enough, the first portion is the who. This is which students we're targeting. Now, in this case, the teacher's targeting all of the students in English language arts. This could be a teacher who teaches at the middle school level and perhaps teaches several sections of ELA. So they're not talking about just fourth period, but they're talking about all sections combined. Another thing that we typically see in the who section is teachers will identify a percentage of their students that they want to see achieve the goal. For example, they'll say something like 80% of my ELA students. In those cases, realize that the teacher is probably setting a goal to reach a specific rating. So if they want to get excellent, the district has said 80% of the students have to meet that target to get excellent, well, then the teacher might start off saying 80% of my students will. My recommendation is you shoot for the moon, say all of your students, let's not write anybody off from the start. The second piece is saying that they will improve their score by 20%. So this is the target. This is the amount of growth expected. Usually it's set looking at historical data, baseline data, and any other information we can obtain to talk about why that would be reasonable. So in this case, we're looking at a whole group goal. It's quite feasible that this teacher could have decided instead to tier the students. So breaking them up into smaller groups and saying group A will improve their score by 20%, group B is going to improve by 40%. And they would use their historical data, knowledge of students in the curriculum to determine how they're going to do that. The district writing rubric is going to be the tool here. So this is the what, and this is helping the teachers to determine what tool they're going to use to measure growth. And then, of course, our last piece is the time-bound piece. When is the instructional interval over? When do we expect those students to be able to reach that goal? So this is just from the teacher's perspective, some tips in writing better goals for student growth. You can check out more of our information at kidsatthecore.com.